Nowadays, we're constantly urged to be present. Yet humans spend more than a third of our lives caught up in streams of self-talk, as we reflect, reminisce, or play out scenarios in our heads. Our inner voices are an evolutionary adaptation and have enabled humans to become the only species on Earth with the ability for introspection. But while they allow us to problem solve and make wise decisions, too much introspection can be a bad thing. That's because all too often, introspection turns to chatter, a loop of negative self-talk. Luckily, our brains are built with all the tools we need to turn down the chatter. This video will teach you how to turn your worst critic into your best friend. In this video, you'll learn different thinking strategies to get distance from your chatter, why connecting with nature helps you recharge, and how to find the appropriate advisors to help you with your problems. Let's admit it, we all talk to ourselves. While that might not be a shocking thing to do, it is shocking just how fast we do it, at a rate of 4,000 words per minute. To say those same words out loud would take close to an hour. Clearly, our inner voices are an inherent part of our minds. We developed them so we could evaluate our past and prepare for the future. Unlike other species, we find meaning in our experiences. That's because our inner voices facilitate our ability for introspection, which allows us to learn from our mistakes and plan for future events. We develop this voice during infancy, and, as we learn to speak, it helps us with self-control. By mimicking the instructions received from parents, children learn to manage emotions. Then, as they grow older, they begin to use their own words to harness self-control. In adulthood, our inner voices help us keep track of the goals we strive for. Whether we're working toward a promotion or winning the heart of our crush, verbal thoughts pop up to remind us of our purpose. And we can also run mental simulations. For instance, considering various texts we could send to that crush and what effect they might have. Ultimately, our inner voices greatly contribute to how we shape our identities. That's because, through the process of introspection and reflection, we create meaningful narratives about ourselves. What's easier to memorize? 800-520-6755 or 800-520-6755? The first, right. That's because it's only 3 pieces of information, while the second set is an unbroken string of 10. This is a classic example of how our minds can only hold 3 to 5 pieces of information at any single moment, and that's under optimum conditions. If there's too much chatter, our minds tend to slow down dramatically. Our brain's executive functions enable us to focus on what's important, tune out distractions, and direct our energy to the task at hand. These functions kick in when instinct alone isn't enough to drive our behavior. But they can only handle so much data at any one time. When we ruminate too much, we sap the neurons needed for our executive functions. Besides undermining our executive functions, chatter also gets in the way of our social relationships. When there's too much chatter, we have to get it out. But ironically, the more we share with sympathetic friends, the more we push them away. After all, relationships demand that we listen, too. But people suffering intense negative emotions have trouble knowing when it's time to stop talking. What's worse, chronic chatter can have a negative effect on our health. Which is all to say that too much chatter presents serious negative consequences. The more chatter consumes us and the more we express it, the more isolated and painful our lives become. So how to deal with chatter? Luckily there are techniques that can help you with this problem. Keep watching to learn more about them. To turn down chatter we can employ different techniques. Getting distance from chatter is the easiest way to put it in perspective. Chatter involves zooming in, emotions raging, we single-mindedly focus on the problem. This causes us to be totally consumed, which encourages depression and anxiety to kick in. Our stress response is activated, and, seeking to resolve the crisis, we zoom in more and more. Pretty soon, we've lost all perspective. Picture one of your negative memories as if it were a video on your phone. Now, picture that event as if it were happening to someone else and you're just another person in the room. In various studies, Participants who used this technique emerged with more clarity about their problems, while also showing lower stress and emotional responses in the brain. Another helpful technique is temporal distancing. Say you're under a stressful work deadline, thinking about how little it will matter in 10 years helps put it in perspective. For instance, considering that pandemics have come and gone throughout history can help you realize that COVID-19 will also pass and things will return to normal. Over time, learning to look at ourselves at a greater distance, similar to the way we see others, leads to more wisdom. That's because wisdom is based on the ability to see the big picture, as well as acknowledging the limits of our knowledge. Another useful technique is distanced self-talk, a technique that has been repeatedly shown to help lessen shame and embarrassment, lower stress, and promote wiser reasoning. And it all starts with saying your name. Normally, our chatter comes in the first person singular, what's known as I talk. For example, we might think, why did I get so angry earlier? Or why was I so stupid? I talk has been closely linked with negative thought spirals. By using distanced self-talk, we can reframe a threat of failure as a challenge. And a challenge, unlike a threat, is something that a person can tackle. This not only helps reduce chatter, but it also makes a difference on a cardiovascular level. When people are stressed, arteries tend to constrict, but in a challenge mindset, they're more relaxed. Lastly, let's not forget the universal you, that's the you that addresses norms, not personal preferences. Like, you gotta step back or you gotta be cool with it. We actually hear this all the time. We can use the universal you to invoke the difficulties everyone faces. Doing so allows us to step back and gain perspective, quieting chatter at the same time. When we feel bad, we want to feel consoled because this makes us feel safe. This is how we fulfill our emotional needs. And when these needs are met, our brains produce a whole range of feel-good chemicals. The problem is, to deal with chatter, we not only need support, but also someone who can help us gain some perspective on the situation. Unfortunately, when we're in pain, we tend to focus on empathy over perspective. And the people we look to for help tend to go along with this, in a practice called co-rumination. They ask us for the play-by-play of the situation, offering condolence and empathy. But as we relate what happened, we relive the negative event and feel worse. They ask more questions and so on. The solution to this is to find supportive people who can make us feel heard, but also guide us toward a solution. A great example of this balance was created by the FBI for hostage negotiations. Its strategy advises the use of active listening and empathy to build rapport and influence a behavioral change. In other words, when you go to loved ones for support, look for those who help steer you toward a solution rather than encouraging you to stay focused on the problem. Also keep in mind that while your brother is great to talk to about family problems, he may not be the best person to talk to about work issues. Nature engages our attention in a very particular way, one that draws us away from chatter and allows us to recharge. Not all attention is created equal. In fact, there are two types, involuntary and voluntary. Voluntary attention requires your willpower to engage it, as it does when you do a crossword puzzle or drive a car. Because of that, voluntary attention costs you energy. It can even be exhausting. Involuntary attention, on the other hand, is engaged when something draws you in, a beautiful sunset, for example, and it actually helps you recharge. Nature engages your involuntary attention and fills you with a sense of awe, a powerful and transcendent emotion that helps you get outside of yourself. This lets your voluntary attention levels recharge. Now, you don't just feel awe in nature. The same feeling can arise from watching an amazing concert or a baby take her first steps. And there are other ways to get outside of yourself, too. One is to exert some order. Take tennis champion Rafael Nadal, who has a set of customary habits he performs on the court, like lining up his water bottles in just the right way. By putting attention into organizing his physical environment, he's able to still the voices in his head. But the benefits of instilling order go beyond high-stakes situations. Feeling in control helps you believe you can achieve your goals and affects how much effort you put into doing so. And one of the easiest and most effective ways of instilling order is to organize your physical environment. According to studies, placebos, whether in the form of pills or totems, can relieve both physical and emotional symptoms. Why? Because the human brain loves prediction. Even walking successfully is based on predicting where you can safely put your foot. And when you take a pill to cure a headache, you tell yourself that doing so will bring relief. Right there, your inner voice begins to shift. We pick up a lot of these beliefs from our families and our culture. Often, these come in the form of rituals. For instance, think of all the different funerary rituals, from memorials to mourning rites, that help people deal with grief. People create their own rituals, too, like Wade Boggs fielding 150 ground balls before each game, or Steve Jobs speaking to himself in the mirror each day. Rituals are chatter-reducing cocktails, because they work to reduce chatter on many levels. For starters, by carrying out a ritual, our attention is pulled away from the problem, thereby reducing anxiety. And since there's something within our control, rituals provide a sense of order. Lastly, the meaning behind the ritual helps to connect us with our inner values and our communities, helping us feel less isolated. Rituals are also easy to establish. For example, you can make a ritual of washing dishes whenever you feel stuck while working. It's an easy way to sidestep stress and chatter. In the end, all these techniques strive to put distance between you and your chatter. Because while chatter may be an unavoidable byproduct of your inner voice, there's no reason to let it make your life unmanageable. No matter how bad your situation seems or how negative your thoughts get, things will always seem a little easier if you manage to put a bit of distance between you and your chatter. You can do this either by reframing your thoughts or by changing your environment. Ultimately, try to see your problem in the bigger scope of things. Doing so is sure to make it seem smaller. What do you think about this topic? Is chatter a big part of your life? Can these techniques help you to turn it down and focus better? Feel free to share your experiences in the comments section.